You're listening to Tehachapod with Key Budge, Corey Costello, and Greg Garrett.
Welcome to another episode of Tehachapod. I'm Key Budge, Corey Costello, Greg Garrett. Join us. Guys,
some dude just skateboarded by, didn't he?
did.
Yeah,
Golly.
we need a real studio.
Seriously, like we have to do with skateboard noises. Like this is an award-nominated podcast, folks, dealing with skateboard noises in the background.
I don't know if it came across, but I could almost feel like it was on the back
it came
of my
across.
neck.
No, it came across. You
I
can
watched
hear it.
him go by, and I'm like, oh, do we re-record?
No,
or do
no,
just
we
leave
let
it?
this roll
Oh,
completely.
okay, here we go.
This is what we're dealing with, people.
It's the beauty of live podcasting.
Okay, for sure.
Live to tape.
We've got a couple things we want to talk about. We've got an interesting guest that Corey got a chance to catch up on. So let's tease your interview a little bit. Tell people what the meat of our podcast is going to be.
Local author Gary Perlin just released his book, The Dark of the Gray. So it's a fabulous book. It's super well written, and we'll talk to him. I had a chance to catch up with him at the coffee mill and sit outside like writers do, sipping espresso and chatting about books.
Here we go.
And of course, because Corey's a writer, and he has to make sure us writers, he did that in plural. It wasn't when talking to a writer, it was in plural.
I read Gary's stuff and I go, wow, I have a long way to go. Like, Gary's fabulous. So we'll talk to him about his book. It's really good.
Well, writing a book's different than writing a column.
Yes.
I've done that like you, and it's much different in the amount of time and effort. So I'm sure you guys will
we dive into that
that
process a little bit. It's pretty fascinating how it's about it was about a 4 to 5 year journey for him.
Oh, long time.
And that, for me, writing is a part of our arts and our culture, which is really kind of a strong texture of what Tehachapi is. And there's this vibe that we have in the downtown area with our, TVAA, and it's just another facet of, what Tehachapi is.
Yeah, we're creative, I think.
Yeah, you read my mind, Key. Actually, I was thinking about engineering and technology. We have so much of that around us, but we have so much art around us. And, the artistic community, whether it's writing a book, whether it's painting, whether it's music, we really enjoy so much talent in this community.
We are a special place. It's we're eclectic mix of people, like you said, the engineering side, so the technical arts, and then we've got the creative arts, me somewhere in between that kind of can appreciate both but doesn't have an ability to do either.
Yeah, right. When you get older, you start looking at that and you go, man, I wish I could do that, but I really appreciate the fact that you can, and I really I respect it so much more because it's hard to do.
I think that's a key word, respecting what that takes to get it done, because now here at my age, here I'm in my 50s, it's not in my skill set.
Yeah,
but I understand how hard it is to do it.
Absolutely.
We all have a calling. Yeah. We're all good at something.
Now, what else do we have that's coming up in the downtown area? We're anticipating something positive again.
Well, Farmers Market is going to be extended through the end of October. So 4 more weeks. So we added 4 weeks. We're adding 4 more weeks. So Main Street is extending it through the end of October. That's going to give the local farmers an opportunity to share their produce, right? Because our growing season is short and it's towards the end of summer, aka fall. And so apples, berries, those sorts of things, we're going to give an opportunity. So we're really excited about that.
It definitely brings in, like with the apple season, where we're not having the apple festival, but it gives the opportunity for the Pulfords. And then you've got your Bright Creek Farms and things that are getting ready to go to harvest. And they can still bring their wares here, and Tehachapi
That's right.
can still go out and support the local guy.
Right.
Everyone else has been a Kern County farmer that's been out. Besides Mosner, I know is directly a Tehachapi, but some of the others have been around the peripheral that have been benefiting early. Now we get a chance to make sure we're including all our local growers.
Some of those Tehachapi apples, man, best in the world. Oh. And if Washington disagrees, I will fight them because our apples are better than Washington.
Oh, I'd agree with that. Absolutely. No. There's one that we never miss out at Pulford, and I forget the name of it, but my gosh, every fall I've got to run out and get a box of whatever it is. They're just so dang good. I want to touch on the project that's been taking place for several weeks this summer, and we've been kind of lucky that we haven't seen the school traffic. We're talking about the rail corridor. We're seeing that coming very close to being buttoned up.
That's right, the project. So we're talking about the downtown, the Railroad Safety Corridor project, the enhancements to the 3 crossings, Denison, Hayes, and Green Street. As of this recording, the only open crossing is Hayes, so Denison and Green are closed, but we're making incredible progress. So next week, so the first full week in September is when we expect to have all 3 crossings reopened. But again, there's coordination with the contractor and then Union Pacific, but it's going along well. The quality is, second to none. UP is working with us well. DOD, our contractor, is doing an amazing job. And so everyone just keep patient with us, continue to follow the construction signs, the detour signs, be safe out there. But it's going along really well. And you're right, Key. We are, there's always a little silver lining. We don't have the school traffic and those things. So, continue to be safe.
One thing I can say is thank you to the public paying attention to what with this project. They have not been vocally mad. I've had some questions,
right,
and they understand. It's like, okay, we're going to appreciate it when it's done.
Right.
And I just appreciate I think we need to make sure we say thank you to the community for being patient, using those detours, and understanding that there is a long-term benefit of safety for the entire community.
Aesthetics and safety crossing the railroad line. So
we need to get to this interview because it's a local guy. Corey, let's set this up.
Yeah, Gary Perlin, he and I go way back. We actually used to play football together when we were kids. And, he graduated from Tehachapi High School and bounced around the country a little bit. And he and his wife, Wendy, just moved back not too long ago. He actually finished the book in Tehachapi, but it's been about a 5-year project that started in Seattle and was released just a few weeks ago, and it's available now on Amazon. So The Dark of the Gray, and Gary Perlin and I got a chance to catch up earlier this week at the Coffee Mill.
Let's listen in on your conversation.
Well, congrats, first of all. I mean,
Thank you.
This is pretty cool, man. How long was this, entire process?
Well, there's a long and a short version. I guess if I would say the entire process probably would be 12 years, because that's when I first had the idea for it, and that ties into my past paranormal experiences and stuff. So it's kind of an amalgamation of just my past paranormal experiences, as well as my how my beliefs changed over time.
Sure.
And but the entire process to write the book itself was 5 years, a little over 5 years. Yeah.
So the Dark of the Gray is the book, and I kind of told you first when you said you wrote this, and I was like, I'll read it. It's really not my genre. It's kind of sci-fi, not really my thing.
Right.
But I'm not even lying. And I texted you a bunch of times as I was reading this, and I was like, dude, this is so good. I mean, seriously, it's so well written. I think there was right at the very beginning, it was one of the first few pages where I just read it, and then just it might have been the opening paragraph, but just the descriptive language.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, this is so well
I really
done.
appreciate that.
I mean, it obviously took a ton of time, because this isn't just I wrote this, I had this stream of consciousness, because that's how I write. I just have this stream of consciousness, and it just sometimes works out well, sometimes it's trash.
Right.
But this was refined over and over again.
Yes. In fact, I mean, I tell people I'm kind of sick of it myself, because I've probably read it 50 times, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the editing process is by far the most lengthy and arduous process beyond just writing it, because you have to write it and you have to edit. Of course, I would have Wendy, she was my wife, she was integral to the success of this book, because she originally edited the first few parts, and she really taught me so much about writing, because I'm a creative guy. I wasn't necessarily a writer, except for poetry and stuff, which is very loose. You can kind of do whatever you want with poetry. So with her, she really taught me sentence structure, how to break up paragraphs, when to use. I didn't even really understand how to use quotes correctly.
And that was always I've always thought about, I should write a book, and I can never figure out the dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough.
Everybody does it differently, though. Some people are more very descriptive. He said, so-and-so said, so-and-so said. And other people, I guess they think you're going to get it as you're reading it, and you do. Mm-hmm. You can kind of tell who's talking. So,
exactly.
I mean, what did you kind of use with your
Well, that's a good question.
model?
I mean, and to add to your point, I mean, I've read books where they didn't use quotes at all. They just would do another break, and then they would talk.
You could tell they were talking.
You could tell who was talking. Yeah. But for me, I kind of just picked up on what Wendy kind of showed me, and I just ran with it. And I think she'll even tell you, I don't really need help anymore. I can just kind of do it myself, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's just more of just learning what she kind of taught me,
Yeah, it's a different. I mean, it's like I said, not usually my genre, but just you would think, oh, it's a sci-fi book about aliens, right? But there is a big spirituality element in this.
That's right.
There is, you've got Bible verses, there's a spiritual element to the characters. How'd you get that kind of combination idea?
Another good question. I mean, well, as I sort of mentioned back in my history, I grew up with a lot of paranormal activity in my house. In fact, I lived on Santa Barbara Drive when I was growing up, and I had all kinds of paranormal activity there. And I kind of was responsible for bringing some of that in because we used to mess with Ouija boards and stuff, which was a stupid idea. And, you know, for all you kids out there, it isn't just a game. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Anyway, that stuff followed me for a while. And I moved to Phoenix eventually. And I remember it following me there and things happening. And, well, the first idea I ever had for this book was one morning I was awoken by something banging hard on my desk.
Yeah.
Right. So that part,
which is in the book.
It's in the book. It's the first part of the book, basically. Yeah. And, you know, not to say that the book completely follows my life and my story, but it's definitely got influences of me in there. Yeah. So that was really kind of what happened. And those kinds of things happened, you know, quite often where I was living. So that kind of spurned that imagery in my head, and I just had to run with it. But again, it wouldn't be until years later until I actually wrote it, you know, because I dabbled, I tried to write a little bit here and there, and I just couldn't get the motivation.
Yeah.
And then finally, when I was in Seattle, we were living in Seattle, I was on a hike, and it's beautiful out in Seattle. Like, there's a lot of hiking trails. And I think I was on Tiger Mountain, and I was walking down this road, which was particularly beautiful. The sun was like kind of cresting over the mountains, and it was just this beautiful sunrise. And I took a picture and with my phone, and then I looked at the picture, and I just had this idea, like, this, if I turn this into like a nightscape, this would make like a great book cover. And then I was just like, why don't I write this book? I'm going to go ahead and do it, you know? And I thought, you know, naively that I was going to finish a book in 3 months or something.
Right.
I didn't think it was going to take that long. So here we are 5 years later, you know, and I can honestly say that I think everybody should write a book if they have it in them, but be prepared, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, is obviously the amount of times you went over this and redid it. But what about the places in this book? I mean, obviously you pointed out Seattle, which you live there, and there's a, you know, the story sort of starts in Seattle, but you've got Texas, New Mexico, you know, underground military installations, whatever. So were these places you visited? Did you? I mean, how did you kind of get the places for this book?
Some of it a bit randomly, I have to confess, and then some of it was definitely research-based, you know, because once I really started getting interested in the paranormal and aliens and what UFOs really are and all these things, I started just diving deeper, watched a lot of YouTube videos, obviously, did a lot of research online, and I started to come to a different conclusion than what a lot of people have about what aliens are.
Yeah.
And that's in the book, you know, it kind of explains throughout the course of the book what the main character starts to believe, you know, so...
Big ugly, right?
Big ugly, yep. Big ol' ugly, yep. Exactly.
No, and you do. You go down that road, and that's kind of where the spirituality piece comes in, because it's not just an alien. There's more to it. Yeah, I mean, this was such a... I mean, it was, I got it down. I made sure I downloaded it on Kindle, so you got a couple bucks in your pocket.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate the support, you know.
But I like to read usually e-editions anyway, because it's
me
a
too.
little smaller. Yeah, and then the character development.
Yeah.
And you have your main characters. You have guys like Ken who pop up in the book, and what are, you know, what did you develop those off of people you came across? Does that kind of, you know, take a little from this person, a little from that person, and that becomes, you know, that becomes your character for the book?
Right. That's also an interesting question because again, it's some of it's a little bit random, and some of it's more kind of like plays on people I've met or even people that are celebrities, perhaps. Like, for instance, Ken is actually based on kind of like 3 different personalities that I've seen and known, and one of them is actually Han Solo. You know,
Nice.
That kind of came to mind, especially when he's saying things like, "Hey, kid," you know.
I caught some of that.
Who are the other ones? I can't remember the other ones right now, but you know, it's just kind of a mixture of people I've seen and known, and their influence on me, I guess.
Absolutely. And you know, you started the book in Seattle. You guys live where? Seattle, San Diego.
Yep, San Diego.
And so you actually finished it in Tehachapi, though.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a Tehachapi production.
It belongs here now. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. I mean, it did follow me across a couple states and a few cities, and you know, it was rough to try and keep that motivation and that working pace when you're constantly on the move. You have a full-time job, which most of the time I did. And so you have to find hours to work on it. You know, you get home from work, you have to write it, you know, or you wake up early and you write. Oftentimes I would wake up anxiety-filled, you know, just because ideas would come in my head. It's kind of funny, actually, because I would try and take notes if I woke up. Like, sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m, and I would have these ideas, and I would have to, like, try and take notes. So I would get my iPhone next to my bed, And I would wake Wendy up if she saw too much light, right? So I'd actually put the covers over me and like be typing notes, and just so I would remember what to do the next day.
And that's funny because that happens. I'm sure it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
But, whether it's a dream or something, you wake up and you're like, wow, that would make a good book.
Yeah.
And then you forget to write it down. And
it's gone.
Later in the day, you're like, wait, what? Why can't I remember that?
Exactly.
That was so vivid, and then I forgot. So that's interesting that was like a part of the process.
Yeah,
with this
definitely.
Was some of those middle of the night sort of epiphanies or dreams and all that.
Exactly.
So that's totally interesting to how this all sort of came together. And then did moving back to Tehachapi kind of help you, I guess, slow down enough to finish it? Did that kind of help a little bit?
100%. For one thing, I started my business out here, which allowed me to kind of have free time when I wanted it, so I wasn't beholden to having to drive an hour and a half to work when we were like in San Diego or Seattle or something like this, which is just a complete waste of time, So those extra hours I could spend working on this. And, I finished it here because I was allowed to stay up later or wake up earlier or whatever it was. And so I really just kind of put the metal to the pedal on this and finished it here. I could have spent another 2 or 3 years working on it, but I just needed to finish it, so I really pushed through when we got here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now you pretty much, this is what they call self-published, right?
Exactly.
Kind of how it goes, but it's available on Amazon.
Right.
A great way to get it. What was that process like to do the sort of self-publication process? Obviously, there's money involved, but what was that kind of like, and how's that changed? Back in the day, you had to have a publisher unless you're going to staple a book together and put it on the shelf. Now with digital downloads and all that stuff, there is a bigger audience. And I found myself reading more people that aren't necessarily tied to a giant publishing house, but they write well and their stuff's online. So what was that experience like, writing this as independent and then being able to basically produce it and put it to market yourself?
Well, I'm in a unique position, I guess, because, I'm a graphic designer, so things like making the cover and the artwork for it, I can do myself.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to pay somebody for that. Publishing it on Kindle and paperback on Amazon is actually fairly easy to do. There's definitely a process and it takes a while. And the formatting, you have to make sure that's all kind of correct because you can upload it and then there might be like a paragraph and then the rest of the page is empty. And
I've seen that happen once in a while.
And I don't even know if it's in here. I haven't checked for that, but it happens.
Your digital edition was clean.
Okay, good.
That was fine.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time just adjusting that because if something's wrong there, you have to adjust a little bit, upload it again, and that whole process, just uploading it and getting it through the Amazon machinery, takes a good half an hour. It's just like spinning and spinning, working, So yeah, it's a little intensive, but honestly, if you just follow the rules of it, it's fairly easy.
And that's great because that allows more people the opportunity
Absolutely.
to get their stuff out there. And with the way we consume stuff now, you get one book like this, and then it's in your next set of suggestions or something along the similar lines, or and you get more authors that way as well. So hopefully that works out for you, right? Someone might have something along the similar lines, and then pops up, the Dark of the Gray.
Exactly.
You might enjoy that. So what's it like now that it's finished? This was a 5-year process.
Yeah.
So this is like, getting a bird and throwing them out of the nest. So what's it like now that this thing is done?
That's a good question. It's a little weird, I guess, actually, because it kind of creates this void, in your life all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like I wake up and I'm like, I don't have to work on the book.
Sure.
Yes. It's a happy time because I planned this to where there's going to be a sequel, but I'm definitely taking a break. I need like 6 months or something just to kind of refresh because it's intensive and it really puts a strain on you, not only you, but it can have the potential to kind of put a strain on even your marriage and stuff,
Yeah.
But you get through it and you finish it, and I'm proud of the work I've done, and I'm happy about it. And it's like, so now I'm just going to get to kind of relax and hopefully enjoy some of the splendors of the rewards.
That's right. Now you'd put this out in pieces at first, though, right?
I did.
These were volumes, kind of
that's
like
right.
3 or 4 volumes.
Yeah, and if I had to do it over again, I think I wouldn't go that route. Like I said, I'm an impatient guy, so it's like I just want to get things done and out there. And thank God for Wendy because she really helped me kind of slow down and look at things differently. But yeah, there was originally I did part 1, part 2, and part 3, and then at that point I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stop. I'm going to take these off market, and I'm just going to finish the thing and then release it as one book.
Sure.
And so I think that's probably for anybody listening who might want to write a book, probably don't do it in parts, because I just think it also creates a false sense of like excitement with any fans that you might have, Most fans, even me, I think, just want the finished product,
Well, then you're kind of married to once, like, I mean, if you put it out as one piece, right, and something changes, evolves down the line, you can go back and maybe change that setup from the first few chapters, right?
Right.
But once you put it out, those first few chapters are out there, you're married to that sort of script and storyline.
Yes.
So it probably makes it a little bit tougher because you've got to be true to what you already put out.
That is actually an excellent point because, and that's what I'm experiencing right now, So it's unfortunate because a lot of the people, some fans of mine have read the parts already, and they kind of think that they know what the story is, and then I tell them, like, no, it's really changed quite a bit since what you've read, because I've had to, I wrote, like, for instance, part 3 was originally took place in the future, and part 3 was actually part 4, so then what I had to do, I mean, there was so much work involved in that because I wanted to make it linear all of a sudden,
Sure.
So I had to go back and change all the timelines, and the characters did this wrong, and you have to go back and change all these things that actually those things change what's in the future as well.
Yeah.
And so that was a nightmare to deal with. So I wish I would have just done it. The problem is I didn't plan it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't have any plan. I just started writing, and that was a mistake. I should have done a plot. I should have had a timeline. All those things matter,
Sure.
So.
Well, for
hindsight.
For throwing it all together, I'd say you did a pretty darn good job.
Well, thanks, man.
You were able to put it together, and obviously, special shout out to your copy editor,
yes.
and your partner Wendy,
absolutely,
who obviously has been involved in this journey as long as you have.
The whole time.
Was she like really hard on you a lot of times?
I wouldn't necessarily say she was hard on me, but
honest.
she was honest.
Okay,
to a fault, and I appreciate that because if you read the dedication in my book, a lot of that's towards both my mother and my wife because my mom was the same way. And when I was growing up as a kid, I was an artist, so I would draw.
Yeah.
If I brought her a picture she didn't like it or she didn't think it was good, she would tell me, "This sucks. Go do it again." And that kind of really helped me because I need somebody to push me.
Sure.
So Wendy's that same person for me in a sense.
Yeah. When did you make that? You talk a lot about as a kid, you were really artistic. I mean, I remember for a few years, playing football with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when did you go from being like, I want to play sports, to like, I don't want to play sports, I want to focus on art? Like, was there a turning point at one point?
When I started school here, I was, I felt very alone, isolated, and I was kind of a dorky dude. And I met a friend who drew pictures, and he became my best friend over time.
Nice.
And but I started learning from him, and that's really what got me into just the artistic field.
Sure.
And then when my grandfather died, we ended up taking care of him for. I was actually homeschooled because I was helping out taking care of him.
Yeah.
Because he was bipolar, and he ended up getting run over on the freeway, right? And both of his legs were broken, so he had to stay with us. We had to help him with everything. He eventually ended up dying about a year and a half later.
Oh, okay.
And that just, because I really got to know him during that time,
Yeah.
and it really affected me deeply. And then I started writing poetry, and that was kind of my way into writing, I guess.
Yeah.
And, and that's kind of what I tried to bring to the book is kind of that poetic voice as well, which is why I wanted to be very descriptive, and I kind of wanted it to be like a movie in your mind, you know what I mean? Play like that.
And I will say that, like, the descriptiveness of it, I mean, and obviously the book cover really helped because it's mentioned a lot in the story, but just the descriptiveness of it, you're right. Like, I could picture everything, and this is not, something that I don't watch a ton of sci-fi, but the way you wrote it, I could see the illuminating walls and things.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was like, I mean, that's why I kept telling you, like, this is so good. Like,
and I appreciate
because
that feedback.
the descriptiveness of it was amazing. So, well, the book is The Dark of the Gray. It's available on Amazon and any other places you have it right now. Is it a Kindle or?
I mean, people can also go to my website for the book, which is www.thedotg.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, you can get hard copies that way. And,
Exactly.
And yeah, check it out. I encourage people, even if it's not I'm just happy that this was finished in Tehachapi. And,
Me too.
And I'm excited. So looking forward to, I'll give you a couple years for the sequel. I think you left it a little open-ended enough to make another one. So
yeah, whether I regret it or not, it's there.
Yeah. Well done, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Corey. I appreciate it, man.
You're listening to Tehachapod.
Corey, that was a great interview. I really enjoyed that. I love the fact that, Gary was a Tehachapi guy.
Yeah.
married, moves off. He's out in the workforce, moves to a couple of different states, but he ends up back here, and he's telling a story that took years and years to put together.
Yeah, and it's super creative too, and I didn't touch on it too much with him, but it is kind of a science fiction book with some spirituality mixed in, some sort of biblical references mixed in as well. So it's very deep. And, fiction, obviously you can make things up, but science fiction, you have to make things up, but vividly make them up, because you're creating a whole nother world. And that's what Gary did. And I pointed out, it's really not my genre, but it was so well written. I mentioned a few times, I got lost in it. What I mean by that is I would be reading this thing and then thinking, like, forgetting the fact that I'm reading Gary. I guess that makes sense. It
does, because I think what pops into my mind is I'm curious, is because you've known Gary since you guys were kids.
Yeah.
As you're reading this, are you trying to pull, do I know this person, the character that he's talking about? Do I know, whatever this possible references are?
Yeah.
Does it change it as a reader?
Not so much of that. It was just so much like you forget the fact you're reading somebody that you know, and it seems like you're reading John Grisham, to throw that name out there, right? Or somebody like that. You're reading such a professional that you just forget that this is somebody you know. And then it makes it even more impressive when you go back and think. As a matter of fact, and I mentioned it in the interview, I want to go back and I read it now. I'm going to read the first 4 paragraphs of this book.
Okay.
Because I read the first 4 paragraphs and I went, wow, this is so well written that it wanted me to go into the rest of the book because of the descriptive language that he used.
And they always, that's that gotcha moment.
Yeah.
So you've seen the bait floating out there, and he sunk the hook.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to read it, and it starts with, it always starts out the same, brilliant streaking colors which cross the bridge between sleep and consciousness, a buzzing sound with intermittent clicks that gets continuously louder, followed by a thunderous bang that jolts me awake. It almost sounds as if the bang is generated in here, in my room. That's an unsettling thought. Sleep has become a mistress of the night, whose effects now rarely seduce me, the sleepless hours waxing long into the morning. This morning was no different. I woke to what sounded like a heavy fist striking hard against the computer desk in my room. I could almost swear I heard the residual clatter of my keyboard hopping against the desk, but I can't be sure. It was in that in-between stage of waking life and warm, thick sludge of dreamland that beckons you to ignore even the worst terrors for just a few more minutes of sleep. Contiguous to the sounds and colors, there is also a foreboding presence in the room, as if something heavy is pressing me down on the springs of my bed, a presence I cannot see or hear, but can feel. Violent, unconscious outbursts often accompanying these episodes. I couldn't tell if those were simply realistic nightmares, false realities, or a little of both. Whatever the case, it had an undertone of evil. I couldn't explain in what ways it was evil, but it carried with it the weight of something malignant. Wow. Like, just that, I was like, that's really good. I mean, do I know what it means completely? No, not yet, because I didn't get into the book. But just the way he set that sort of waking up from a nightmare, so to speak, I was like, that is absolutely money in the bank. So anyway,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now let's go ahead and run down where you can get it. If for those that are interested, or maybe those that know Gary that want to support him, or those that love sci-fi. My wife's a sci-fi junkie.
I think she'll dig this book. It's called The Dark of the Grey, Grey, and Gary brought up the website on the interview. I don't want to butcher it, so it is in the interview, but easily just go to Amazon. I mean, you can go to Amazon and get the hard copy, or like I did, I'm a Kindle reader, so I got it on digital download and just do it that way. So Dark of the Grey, spelled with an E, and Gary Perlin is the author, and it's really cool. It is it's not a short read by any means, and it was an awesome story, and he did a great job, and it took a long time to complete it. So I'm excited, and like as you mentioned, he's already considering a sequel, which is cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, congratulations, Gary, then on a project completed.
Yeah.
And well done.
Absolutely.
And you got Corey's attention, so that's something to be said for it, because Corey has you got a lot of things going on all the time. A lot of things, and you sat down, and I know you focused in on this. It was something we had the conversation a few times, how much you were enjoying it.
Yeah.
To get to this point.
I was kind of surprised. I just thought that's really not my thing. There's an alien on the cover of the book, and I'm thinking, this isn't me, right? I don't do these books per se. And Gary actually did the cover art too, which is impressive because he talked about his drawing, and so and the cover art sort of makes its way in the story, so it helps seeing this cover before you read the book, because you'll get this imagery in the book quite a bit.
A little, as I look at it, it's like kind of an alien, and there's.
An upside down triangle on his forehead. It's that's an important part of the book.
And it does not look like a friendly encounter.
No. This isn't E.T. we're talking about here. This is the reason why they call him Big Ugly in the book. So anyway.
Well, good deal. Congratulations, Gary. Maybe as he does that sequel, we'll bring him back on.
Yeah. And more authors, too. I know this are kind of teasing the fact that Gary would be on the show. Has got a few more authors to email us. And so we're excited. Absolutely. We'd love to talk to people about their projects.
We've got a 16-year-old young lady, high school student, Sadia Wolf, who has written a comic book that's about to be published.
Nice.
So we've had conversations with her. We're going to have her on a little bit later on in fall when it gets closer to publication.
Yeah.
But she's another Tehachapi girl that's young, creative, and has created this comic book. So that's something that we're going to talk about in a future episode as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, at 16 years old, I had no chance of writing a comic book.
No, I would read them. That was about my level of attention right there was for a comic book. But for her to have that creativity, and she's a local student out at Valley Oaks, so we'll have her on a future episode here in the coming weeks. So, folks, if there's something you'd like us to talk about, shoot us an email, media@TehachapiCityHall.com. We'd love to hear from you. That's how some of our authors have reached out and said, hey, I'm from Tehachapi, and this is something I'm doing. And we want to hear about these cool things. We want to promote things that are going on in our community because they have an impact to all of us. So we'd love to hear from you. media@TehachapiCityHall.com. And we'll catch you on... Corey, you got anything else before I wrap it up and close?
No, that's it. Thanks thanks for this opportunity to promote our local authors. And again, The Dark of the Gray is available on Amazon.
There you go. Enough said. So we'll catch you next time on Tehachapod.
Tehachapod is a conversation about Tehachapi designed for the people who live here or who would like to know more about this mountaintop community. If you have a question you would like answered, email media@TehachapiCityHall.com. We will try to answer it on a future episode of Tehachapod.